Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us. I have two questions, and one is just come across the wire this afternoon. Reuters is reporting that Iran and Russia are close to a deal swapping oil, bartering for other goods from Russia, indicating that the deal is expected to be valued at about $20 billion, indicates would perhaps further undermine our efforts with the most recent negotiations in Iran. And I wondered what your thoughts were, your concerns were. The indications are that Iran and Russia have made progress toward an oil for goods deal, sources said, that would be worth up to $20 billion, which would enable Tehran to boost vital energy exports in defiance of Western sanctions. People familiar with the negotiations told Reuters. Thoughts?
I haven't seen that most recent report, but I'm obviously familiar with this topic. There have been other reports about this. What I can say is this. Since this issue first became something that we were aware of, we have been crystal clear to the Russians that any such deal is not only contrary to the spirit of the P5+1 negotiations that we're involved in, but would also be plainly sanctionable under a number of different authorities that we have. Obviously, the purchase of oil from Iran by Russia would be sanctionable. They sold that oil to anybody else, that transaction would be sanctionable. Whatever financial institution in Russia would be involved in the payment for that oil would be subject to sanctions. We have been very clear with the Russians that...
So the sanctions would go both ways to both countries? Additional, sure. They would violate sanctions with Iran in violating that violation that would cause us to be able to impose sanctions against Russia?
Correct. And, frankly, I think it was clear at the outset that we were, prepared, if necessary, to take action, given our long history of applying sanctions against those who violate our sanctions all around the world. Frankly, I think what has transpired in the last several weeks has only reinforced the point, I would think, for the Russians that we're not unwilling to apply sanctions against Russian entities and Russian individuals if the facts dictate. So
it would be surprising if Russia and Iran entered into this agreement?
Look, I'm not going to predict what the Russians and the Iranians may do. We've been seeing reports about this sort of deal for many months now. It hasn't been consummated to the best of my knowledge. I don't know that the report today really adds necessarily to the situation. I've seen reports like this saying that they're close to this deal for many months now. But as I said, we've been very clear with the Russians, and I should also say very clear with the Iranians that in the course of these P5+1 negotiations that any sort of deal like this would not be conducive to...
I think what you're telling me is that such a deal would be significantly contrary to the agreements we've reached with Iran and would be a significant setback to the desired outcome of those negotiations?
It certainly would not be a welcome development, and as I said, it's one that we've told the Russians, from the highest levels of this government on down, that we would look at, with great disfavor.
Let me turn to Turkey. It at least reported to me that there may be significant trades in the billions of dollars, gold, other trade activity originating between Turkey and Iran. And that would be true despite the sanctions regime that is imposed against Iran. How is this occurring? What are we doing about it? I guess the initial question would be, is there truth to it?
I will answer this question to the extent I can in this session, although I would make the same offer to you that I made to Senator Corker in another setting, which is I'm happy to come in and talk about this in a classified setting where I think we could talk about this in greater detail. I think the short answer, and the answer that I can give you here, is that we have been aware of these allegations, have been watching very carefully the trade in gold between really any country and Iran, preceding the joint plan of action where we've, where that trade has been, the sanctions on trade in gold is suspended on the joint plan of action. But since the summer of 2012, when the president issued an executive order that forbade the sale of gold to the government of Iran, we have been watching the gold trade and have been, let me put it this way, I don't think we have demonstrated any reluctance to apply sanctions where we've seen violations. And this is an area, this is an issue that has been one that we've been looking at. There's obviously been others outside the government who have been focusing on this issue and writing about this issue. And I think I would probably best stop there.
Secretary Cohen, let me go back to Russia before my 52 seconds expire. How long ago did these negotiations begin between Russia and Iran? How long have we been monitoring this? When did we start expressing concern to Russia? Is this a matter of months, weeks? Did they predate the Ukraine and Crimea circumstance? When did this begin?
I think I would rather address that question in a different setting.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Although my preface may be longer than the question. It's something that's transpired here in our hearing, I think, is unique. It seems to me that many members of this committee and some who joined us have been interested in providing more money to you. I think the message has been we want to make certain that you have the necessary resources to accomplish your mission. That is, then you had the chairperson of our full committee describe the tutorial that we were receiving today. And then your testimony, there's a sentence in there that I wanted to highlight. When you talk about resources, we've been able to increase our sanction programs and other output by generating program efficiencies. No one would say that anything but good comes from efficiency. Effective management, we're all for that. And this is the part that I wanted to highlight. And transferring funds when needed among organizations and programs within TFI. And what the tutorial that I received today included was a reminder that when we appropriate money, we're appropriating money broader, more broadly than just your office.
Right.
That money goes to departmental offices, and while the President's request for terrorism and financial intelligence is $105.9 million, that's really that's a portion of a larger amount of money that would be appropriated that's about $309 million to departmental offices.
Right.
The transfer, so first of all, I would suggest to my colleagues who are interested in providing more money to make certain that you accomplish your mission, we ought to be very interested in making certain that that money goes to you, to your office, to accomplish those goals. And then secondly, your testimony about transferring funds, I was interested in knowing or being assured that the transfer works to you, not that you're transferring money out of your office to any of the other departmental offices. Is that true?
Senator, the transfer is within my deputate, as it were. So within TFI. Within TFI, from TFFC to OFAC or to OIA, that's where we're able to shift.
So not transfers from the departmental offices that make up this broad allocation of money are executive direction, your office, tax policy, domestic finance, economic policy, international affairs, Treasury-wide management.
Right.
And so my question is, do you ever transfer money from TFI to any of those other offices within the departmental offices?
So my understanding is that although the funds are appropriated to departmental offices, which includes TFI, there is a presumptive amount that is for TFI, and those are my funds. Those are my funds to use, and they do not get transferred away. The other...
So the Treasury Secretary doesn't come to you and say, Secretary Cohen, we need more money in tax policy. Can you, we need to transfer money from TFI to tax policy. That doesn't happen.
Right. Right.
Am I missing? Is there some
No,
question?
I was just going to say, I think all those other offices at Treasury do important work as well. But the funds that are earmarked for TFI are TFI's funds.
Well, while they may do important work, it is pretty unusual for a number of my colleagues here to be trying to offer more money than you're requesting. And I think in this tutorial that we're having today, it's useful, at least for me and perhaps others, to understand that this money is not, I don't know, sacrosanct within those departmental offices. It's a broader allocation than just your office.
It's a broader allocation, but the funds that are earmarked is probably not the correct term, but the funds that are
It's a word I would not use.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Actually, I want to revise and extend my remarks on that. The funds that are identified as going to TFI are funds that are for TFI's use.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
And thank you, and thank you for closing a little early here, and we'll get him on the road. Let me thank everybody who